So my take is, good people or bad people, there's no such thing. A good man is hard to find. There's no such thing as a purely good person. There's no such thing as a purely evil person. The misfit has good in him. He's the murderer who kills the family. He's tortured. He's had a lot of injustice done to him in his life. The good people, I guess, those who at least don't go around murdering families and have jobs and have a lot of evil in them. And it's easy to miss because it's not a crime family. It's not a war, as you say, they're not at war. This ordinary life. And I think she shows that we're between good and evil.
Throughout life, we meet others who have insights and experiences quite unlike our own. The great ideas of classical works resonate differently with them. Often these treasures of mind and heart go unshared, reserved from others in the course of daily life. But what if we took the time to have those conversations, to sit down and recall those thoughts, those impressions upon us that moved us along our path? Why then, we would no longer be alone, and at least for one shimmering moment, someone else could see the world through our eyes. I give you the Confederal Reserve. Welcome to the Confederal Reserve, presented by BetterPears. I am your host, Dr. Jason Fugikawa. The Confederal Reserve is a show that connects old friends, that is, Confederates, to discuss the ideas and classical works that have shaped their lives and worldviews. Before we get going, I invite you to like this episode, subscribe to the BetterPears channel if you have not already, and click the bell icon to receive notifications so that you remain the first to know of future interviews and podcast episodes. If you would like to support the work of BetterPears with your Federal Reserve notes and receive fractional gold in the mail each month, please follow the link in the description to our crowdfunding program, BetterPears Leaves. As a special bonus for the rest of 2024, every qualifying contribution earns an entry into our monthly Market Mug giveaway. Official rules are available at betterpears.com/giveaway. Now then, the structure of the show is our gimmick we want you to mimic. Our guest for the episode will offer a classical work of particular import to his or her life. What ensues is a conversation that uncovers insights and offers new perspectives on old works. It is a conversation between friends, which is the building block of the cultural renaissance that BetterPears seeks to foster. Our guest today is Mark Gillis. Mark Gillis is the head of school at Holy Family Academy in Manchester, New Hampshire, where he began working in 2014 after 3 years as principal at Sacred Heart School in Hampton, New Hampshire. Prior to his work as a Catholic school administrator, Mark taught at Magdalen College from 1990 to 2010. Mark has a bachelor's degree in liberal studies from Magdalen College, the Apostolic Catechetical Diploma from the Vatican, and a master's degree in education from Boston College. He also is the director of the Don Bosco Boys Camp, which he founded in 1997. It's my great pleasure to welcome our guest today on the Confederal Reserve, Mark Gillis. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Jason. Great to be here.
Well, we get started right away. Thank you again for being on the program. But what is your vintage work and why is it so important?
I chose A Good Man is Hard to Find by Flannery O'Connor. And I think it fits here as in the company of great books, even though it's not as old. And we'll see how much it stands the test of time. As you mentioned, at least it outlived the life of the author. So I think when most people read Flannery O'Connor for the first time, no one's neutral. I think people come away, I think for the most part, and now I'm reading a book with high school students, high school seniors, don't know what to make of it, don't know make heads or tails. It's usually very shocking. You've got in other stories, and you've got a guy with tattoos all over his body. You've got a Bible salesman who doesn't believe in God, steals the prosthetic leg of a one-legged girl. So you've got all these freakish characters. You've got a lot of violence. You have that in this story, and I think it upsets you. And I think that's one mark of a work that has a lot, is that you don't know what to make of it at first, and you can go back and reread. There's that Sister Wendy. She was a nun not too long ago. She had a series about arts, and she explained paintings. And Bill Moyes was interviewing her, and she made that point that a great work of art, you can come back to it again and again and again. You notice new things, and when you first look at it, it shakes you. You don't know what to make. It could be anger, fear, confusion, joy, whatever it is, but you're really awake. You've been awakened. The gadfly has stung. And then Bill Moyes says, "Oh, so it kind of disturbs you in some way." disturbs your peace. He said, "What?" So, for example, that years ago in New York City, an artist took a crucifix and submerged it upside down in these in urines. Okay, so that would be it's disturbing. That would she says, that's not disturbing in the least because everybody knows exactly what they think of it right away. Some people are horrified and offended. Some think it's some kind of creative thing. So that's not a real deep something being offensive or just shockingly violent along those lines is not what it means. So I had that experience reading her stories, especially the short stories, and this story definitely has that. It's gruesome for what happens. You've got a lot of violence, which I guess we'll get there. So that's one thing. It shakes you. I think it's literature, so it's crossing disciplines. But to think of it in terms of you know Socrates and this part of human beings where we tend to be asleep, we're cave dwellers, happily dwelling in our caves, and waking up is unpleasant, and being dragged out of the cave, hopefully by a friend, an older, wiser person, is great. So,
So,
yes,
maybe kind of a couple thoughts going everywhere here. One, A Good Man is Hard to Find is a short story, so it's maybe different than some of the other works we featured on the program previously. Long epics or novels and these kinds of things. Like this is a story that can be read in a sitting. You can read it to somebody in a sitting, right? You can kind of listen to it, or kind of. I think for me, it's a little bit easier to hear it and to be able to visualize things, particularly in a short story like this with kind of the detail and the nuances and that kind of stuff. But anyway, and so you're saying it disturbs us. I think one of the terms that comes out in describing Flannery O'Connor's work is sort of the grotesque. I was just wondering if you think that's what does that term mean? But two, like, does that fit kind of the style of writing that she does? And and maybe we can go a little bit more into that aspect.
Yeah, and thank you for pointing out the basics. That's a short story and not that long. So honestly, the genres and Southern Gothic and grotesque, that's what you should always hear about Flannery O'Connor. Myself personally, I don't really think in those terms. I just come at the book. So definitely understand that you've got shocking violence. You've got characters. I think I used the word freakish before. I don't know if that's for me, the disturbing part. It definitely gets your attention when you come across these characters. But it's different from, I don't know, just spectacle or something that, I don't know, for shock value. It's different from a sort of a horror movie or, so there's something out of the ordinary in the characters for the most part. The plot is usually pretty simple. You've got in this story, we have a family driving to Florida for vacation. That's pretty much all the action, except they do break down and things go from there. You've got everything rise must converge, a bus ride downtown for the son and mom. She's going to the reducing class. So the plot action is pretty basic and stuff you would experience every day. So that's one criticism here is that, boy, you're going to go down south and you're going to see these things all over the place, the one-legged gal and the family's being taken out to the woods and shot. So, like any story, you're taking events that are true in their essence and the kind of thing that might happen. So, I think the characters, there's a reason to their physical reason they have the physical description, physical body they have, or the life situation, the misfit in this category. So, I guess
maybe one way to kind of take the discussion is I was severely impressed upon me by Aristotle's Poetics, right? And so there's a big kind of discussion, particularly in the case of like plot. I mean, for Aristotle, plot is king. And he navigates one. I mean, we're in the world of kind of novels, and here are short stories that are novel in the sense of the main character, the main protagonists are not kings and dukes and bishops or whatever. They're normal people. They're regular people. This family going on vacation to Florida. But within that, though, there's this question of, well, yeah, the general plot trajectory, right? Is this a story about good people and good things happen to them. Well, like that's kind of what we would expect. It's not really a story. It's definitely not tragedy. You would have this idea of wicked people coming to wicked ends, and we would say, okay, well, that's justice. So it's not quite tragic in what Aristotle's getting to in his Poetics. But then you have this other problem of where he kind of latches onto of a good person with sort of this flaw, but it comes to a wicked end, right? A downfall. But here, perhaps you have this case of, say, wicked people that come into good, or at least, right? That's the disputed question, right? Spoiler alert: it's a short story. If you haven't at this point, if you haven't already read or experienced the story, stop and go do that. But it's short, so you could pause and come back. But this idea of whether the misfit, right? You're kind of part of us wants there to be some sort of like, oh, his plot is foiled or whatever, and somehow they all survived or whatever, and the gunshots in the distance were not actually this serial murder of an entire family. But that's not the case, right? That's not how it turns out. And so it seems that his sort of designs are not thwarted, that the bad guy gets his good end. They get clothes, and they get all the worldly wealth of that family.
The shirt with the parrots on it, the yellow shirt with blue parrots.
Exactly. That's an inheritance piece. And so part of us has to, I think, the beauty, I think, of O'Connor is that it's all up for grabs. It isn't going to happen. It's not going to have a storybook ending. But I find myself kind of playing sort of the detective of like what's going on here, right? What are the red herrings in this story? What are the kind of the nuggets, kind of narratively speaking, that are going to kind of come into play later on, right? So the misfit is introduced almost like in the first line. You think it's the red herring, but it turns out to actually be the case. But then there's other little aspects like the stupid cat. I really feel like this story is just an anti-cat story, because basically the cat ruins everything. And so we can go in that route too.
Yep.
Why are you traveling in a car with a cat that's not Gage, right? Like seriously.
Yeah. Pity Sing,
these
the
are
cat.
problems that should have been brought up to the driver early on in the trip. So yeah, I mean, is that something that I think Flannery O'Connor wants us to wrestle with? This idea of good people or bad people, but their endings is not necessarily going to be according to our understanding of justice.
Yeah.
Is that part of it?
So my take is, good people or bad people. There's no such thing. A good man is hard to find. There's no such thing as a purely good person. There's no such thing as a purely evil person. The misfit has good in him. He's the murderer who kills the family. He's tortured. He's had a lot of injustice done to him in his life. The good people, I guess, those who at least don't go around murdering families and have jobs and have a lot of evil in them. And it's easy to miss because they're not. It's not a crime family. It's not a war, as you say. They're not at war. This ordinary life. And I think she shows that we're between good and evil. So say with the Poetics, you've got someone's better than us and they have a tragic flaw, or you've got people who are lower than us and they're doing all their hijinks. I think what we see here, and it doesn't contradict any of that, of course. A good man is hard to find. And we'll get into the story a little bit more, meaning you don't have this person's good, that person's bad. And I think that's just more human. And even at the end of this story, where the man has just taken out a whole clan, there's still movement happening inside him. So there's something, the gadfly or the violence, something that rocks your world and disturbs you. And there's a moment of grace. And different people respond different ways in her stories. And some, it seems like the arrow's pointing up, and some, the arrow's pointing down. But they're different now than they were 5 minutes ago. So I love that about this story, that every character is recognizable because they've got a lot of good points. And what's really interesting on O'Connor is there's some very dark, you could say evil parts of the good people's hearts. The father-son, the mother-son relationship. We'll see a lot of darkness that's in there. The grandmother, who is the Southern belle and has great manners, and she's very pleasant. She's always in a good mood, but her lying and manipulation leads to the cat being in the car, and leads to the detour. And really, every step of the way, there's 4 or 5 plot points. She's the one who makes it go that way, and she's being sneaky. She uses the kids to manipulate the parents, and so she causes this hideous situation, which definitely is a lot worse than you deserve for being a person who tries to manipulate a trip. You don't deserve to be shot, have everyone with you shot, but you see, there's a lot of darkness in there, and then so that's my take. That it's more. Yeah, there's no such thing as one who's all good or all bad. And everyone gets their shot. Everyone gets their fall. There's the effects of their sin, and the little shot, no pun intended, a little chance, a little light opening of the coffin to come out of that, come back to life.
Yeah, no, I mean, part of me, in reading this, so you enjoy this because this is me reading the short story for the first time. I've been aware of the story, somewhat understood the plot or whatever, but just kind of sitting down and reading it. Part of my kind of initial reaction is because I am a father and a man. I try to identify with the husband in this scene, and all the kind of missed opportunities to assert himself and to avoid the destruction of his entire family. I mean, it just kind of, it's these cascading effects, right? Where he kind of, they go off in this little side tangent trip. And we've all been there, right? If you, in my part of the world, you're driving through Missouri, there's caves and various, roadside attractions or whatever, that are going to kind of catch your eye. And okay, it's a long trip, and what if, it's break it up a little bit to have a memory, something unusual, right? But it keeps on getting worse and worse, right? But before the cat kind of jumps on his face, the grandmother's thought is like, oh wait, that was in Tennessee. That's not where we are here, right?
It's hilarious, right? It's laugh out loud funny.
Yeah, it's like you didn't even die going on this like side quest. It was like an completely unnecessary side quest.
Yeah.
And there was no pot of gold at the end of this. And it was just all kind of for naught. But then okay, your car wrecks, your family's kind of, concussed or whatever. You've survived a car wreck, and then these goons show up to kind of take advantage of you. And they have guns, and so that's a problem. But then you're kind of escorted off with your son and with one guy. It's just the one, right? I mean, like the numbers improve.
He has
the
misfit. He's. I see. Who gets taken off the shot? Yeah, I don't remember that. Is it just Hiram or Bobby Lee?
I think it's a 1-on-2.
Yeah.
I mean, the kid is a kid, and he's not really going to be counted for anything. But like your odds of winning that out, plus the understanding that there are going to be gunshots, and therefore, you make your move or whatever. Like nope, he didn't do it. He's totally dead. And so like this frustration of understanding maybe his lot in life or his situation and the family situation and having sort of his mother-in-law, right? Kind of breathing down his neck all the time. Okay, and you're in a car wreck. Okay, but then what's the next right thing to do? He's just missed opportunity, and that's like, as me as a reader, that's like the frustration of it all. Like,
right?
Seriously, this is how this is going to go.
Yeah, and isn't that very human and relatable? So you've got he and his wife, and the wife doesn't even get a name, right? So in the story, she hardly speaks, but you've got the son who's beaten down by the mother, as you'd say, and you can see this. You can kind of imagine how this has been going on for a long time. So, all right, a son who has a mom with a strong personality. Again, does that lead to that kind of catastrophe at the end? But you do also see in there, he's got a lot of, I don't know if I'd call it hatred for his mom. He clearly is annoyed at her all throughout the story, because she does things that could be easily get on your nerves, and especially when it's after the grandmother, because the cat caused the accident, and they're almost ready. The grandmother, she realized, oh my goodness, I was totally wrong about this lie I made up anyway about the gold being in the house. And she kind of wishes, I hope I'm dead so I don't have to own up to this lie that I told him. But then when he says something wrong, she recognized, you're the misfit. And he says something so nasty to her, it doesn't say what it was. Even the misfit says, ma'am, he didn't really mean that. People say things when they're angry. So he is sort of beaten down, and you could say not a man of action. He's also got a lot of deep, deep resentment towards his mother, and that bears bad consequences in life.
Yeah, no, there's a whole lot of dysfunction, and it's interesting. Like, it could have been a story as simple as that, right? And then you throw in the dysfunction of the misfit, and in a way, I think I have no idea how Flannery O'Connor's mind worked, but it's almost like let's build this sort of pressure cooker, and then we'll throw some neutrinos at it or whatever and collide it together, and see what happens, right? What kind of this sort of dance of everything being up in the air, right? The story at that point, when the misfit catches up with the family, it could go kind of any way, and it I don't know if it goes the worst possible way, but it's pretty close, and I don't know. But like, how does that? How do we walk away from it in that case, right? And we live in a particular time, so. For people watching this video years from now, we live in what I call like the pill times, right? And so it's the blue pill or the red pill or like the white pill or the black pill. This seems kind of like a black pill story, right? Sort of a cynical kind of a view of that expect the worst and oh my goodness, here comes the worst, right? So how do you see, what is O'Connor in your mind trying to give the reader, right? Presumably she's trying to edify the reader. And I think that's why I think her work has so much staying power, because she's trying to present something of reality, and reality is sometimes harsh, grotesque. But how do you see kind of what makes, I think, her work strangely, a Catholic work? I think her Catholicism is sort of very much infused into her writing and worldview. And then isn't something that is just simply horror of sort of, right, kind of a staple horror genre kind of narrative.
What's she giving us? I think she's giving us a chance, meaning you get your chance. We get our chance every day. The drama of goodness and sin and death and resurrection is every day in ordinary, simple life. So sometimes, like Socrates saying, Republic, let's talk about the soul. Let's write it in big letters because it's kind of hard to see. So let's build a city, da da da. So yeah, you do have, as she says, you don't, any story, Old Man in the Sea. It's not every day you see someone go out and spend 3 days wrestling one fish. So, but you have the kind of things that do happen in life, and they do help us to see it. So I think she shows that even the best of us have a dark side, and even the darkest have a good side. And really, it's not clear who's who, and that many things that seem maybe like a little fault on the surface, really, it can be very deeply disordered and hurtful and sinful, and can cause chaos that don't always lead to a mass shooting. So, and I think her characters get a chance. The main, in this case, both characters, particularly the misfit and the grandmother, get a chance. Life comes together, and so many events come together that, and if there's a moment, there's the epiphany moment where her head clears, and she looked at the misfit. Well, I got to back up a little bit. She's Gone with the Wind, the Southern Belle, and the old days were good. Now everything stinks now. And she and Red Sammy Butts, who runs the barbecue, whose belly swings like a sack of meal under his T-shirt. It says he's the one who says, good man's hard to find. So, I love Red Sam. He's a great guy, but he's no paragon of virtue and excellence. The barbecue place is called the Tower. I don't know. there's always this element of the good old days are gone, and we're kind of the good ones left. We really are the ones who are good. Everyone else has gone to the dogs. So there's that confusion about who's good and bad. So she did that moment of the misfit is so bad. Can you believe it? And she says, "Wow, you're one of my babies." She actually sees her as her own son. Where a page earlier she looked at Bailey and didn't quite recognize him, and he had his moment, by the way, when in the middle of that crisis scene where he starts shouting, "Mama!" He starts crying out with love, and if I'll be back, Mama, wait for me. It's the first time you hear him say anything warm and affectionate to his mother. Until then, she's just been an annoyance to him, and she could be annoying.
Yeah, no, I think as you were kind of talking about, that chance that we get every day, thinking about how the structure of this short story again is sort of narratively different than say other works we've treated here in terms of like the kind of the Odyssey or like a classical epic where there's sort of travel, right? Because travel in this work in modern times, right, is in an automobile, and there's almost sort of like a bubble compression to it, like that the conversations that happen in the car, right, are different than when they go to the rest stop, right, and they're back kind of in someone's like hall where like Odysseus washes up in shore and he's talking to a king or something like that, right? And then they go back into their bubble and they drive along, and cars are kind of strange, right? There's a windshield, right? A windscreen, and it's not like a motorcycle or like a horse or whatever, and the wind's blowing in your hair, and you have to kind of like pay attention to the bumps in the road and all these other kinds of things, right? You kids can fall asleep in the back seat, right? And they only wake up when the car wrecks. The car wreck is sort of like a shipwreck and sort of Odyssey kind of language, and throws them into kind of a mix where they have to again kind of deal with something, and I think in a lot of ways, and this is me probably reading into it more than not, right, that this whole kind of phenomenon of the automobile and how distance and travel are kind of secluded from us or occluded from us, or whatever way you want to think about it, right? That we don't kind of experience the journey, that we could have a half an hour commute and travel 30 miles every day and miss kind of the reality of the world around us, and yet here's an instance where kind of reality catches up with them, right? That they're thrown not only into a dangerous situation with a car wreck, but they're kind of thrown back into nature, right? A kind of a wild world, because there's no police, there's no service station, there's no food. They're left to kind of a Hobbesian war of all against all, and a surprise, right?
Yeah.
These people that watch us take a wreck are going to come and take advantage of us.
Yeah.
And so I think it's pulling, it's tugging, whether it's kind of subconsciously or consciously in O'Connor's mind, at kind of the reality of however sort of civilized we think America is. It's really big. Like there's a lot of uninhabited wilderness out there that even today we haven't completely tamed, right? And we look at events, hurricanes coming ashore and desolating entire regions that had never experienced that kind of calamity, and the roads, the power lines, and everything kind of getting knocked out, and you're on your own. And there's, I think, something still in Flannery O'Connor's mind where sort of that wild frontier of America can still kind of exist in these little pockets, however much we try to insulate ourselves by civilization.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that angle at all. I mean, you have, are there two cars in the story? So they're cars you talked about, and then the car the misfit is driving, which the first time they see it's described as looking like a hearse. You have a whole trail of breadcrumbs throughout the story of, they drive through Tombsboro. The car looks like a horse. They drive by a graveyard with 5 or 6 bodies in it. There's 5 of them in the car, plus the cat. Well, the cat does end up rubbing the leg of the misfit at the end. So, yeah, no, that's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that angle of the kind of, on the one hand, thrown together, in a little place, but also very isolated from each other at the same time. That's an unhappy family. The kids are real brats. The kids are completely. Remember the is it the son of the daughter? They want to stop wherever. We want to stop this. He starts kicking, punching the dad's car. It hurts the father. And he's all right, we'll stop. But this is the last time. The classic, So, yeah, it's interesting. So they're intensely compacted, which maybe that's what makes the the relationship more intense, and you can't get away from the grandmother. She's going to get out. He's been getting on his nerves his whole life probably, and now she lives with him, and now she goes on vacation with him and screws that up.
No, it's just completely random tangent. Like it is. I don't know, humbling or kind of conspiratorial to see that they have not improved the back seat of a driver's seat to protect from the feet of the person behind him. Like, seriously, like you say, it's for safety. We could totally fix that problem, but I definitely know that problem.
The John Wesley is his name. They should call it the John Wesley cushion or something.
Yeah, give it a good literary reference, and everybody will have to like remember. Oh yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
very good. Any other thoughts on the short story from sometimes I like to think of like remarks that students in the past when I'm reading something with them, like an insight that I never had this before. Has anything come up in your teaching of this work in particular that kind of caught you off guard?
Yeah, that's a great point. We both had that experience. If you read a story every year, and someone notices something you've never seen before, getting back to that Sister Wendy thing about there's just always more there than meets the eye. One student said this year when we did the story, there's a whole question of some of the most famous moments are the last 50 lines, when she looks at the misfit and says, "You're one of my babies." And then the last two lines, everyone seems to have heard those. She would have been a good woman if she just had someone to shoot her every day of her life. So those are both great lines. I'd love to hear your thoughts also on those. But to answer your question, one student said, she, the grandmother who has nothing but contempt for bad people, and the misfit is the worst of the bad people, and he's already been killing her family off one by one. How does she go from that to sincerely saying, "You're one of my babies"? Now, some students were arguing she's manipulating, she's pretending that as a way to get out. So we had a good debate about that. You got to prove that in the text. So you could have that debate. I read it as it does say her head cleared. He was in pain before. He almost was going to cry. He's feeling convicted of sin. I wouldn't be the way I am now. He doesn't fit in the world. I mean, that's something universal about that. There's something off in this world where we don't fit in. We're not home. So, you're one of my babies. And one student talked about, how Bailey could look at his mother so often with hatred, or maybe down to at least resentment, until that moment of crisis where he saw her. And he said something along the lines of, you don't really, love people, until you see them. But he said, no, maybe you don't really see them until you love them. And maybe that was staggering, for an 18-year-old kid to say that she loves, I'd say she sees and loves the misfit for a true fellow human being, or as a mother, or a maternal instinct, a child who's hurt and has had a rough life and has done bad things, has inflicted bad things on himself and others, no question about it. So for her to see him as her son, that's something amazing there. So that was a great way to put it, about the difference between who sees the person. If you're really annoyed by someone, for the most part, is that the truth of who they are, or are they better seen by someone who actually loves them? And that's how you really see the misfit. So it's not just the personification of evil, So that was great. Now, what did you? So your first time, or by the way, I wanted to mention the movie Wildcat. You referenced that. I don't think that's a good introduction to Flannery O'Connor, so I don't recommend that. I think it's a bad introduction to Flannery O'Connor. It's pretty cool that Ethan Hawke and his daughter are trying to captivated by Flannery O'Connor. That's great, but I think it's a terrible introduction to her, and they try to do too much. Anyways, if anyone is wondering, I don't recommend that. There's a great documentary though about it that I recommend, a 2-hour documentary by some PBS branch. So so what do you make of? Let me start with the well, you're one of my babies line. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Well,
Or
my
the
my initial thought is all her worldly progeny now deceased. She has a magnanimity about her that was heretofore,
yeah,
limited to
yeah,
her own progeny.
okay,
Uh, but I think, I mean, this idea of like, yeah, getting shot or at least having a gun pointed at you every day, like that is kind of like that sort of sword of Damocles that's kind of hanging over us. Like, every day could be your last. One day it will, right?
mm-hmm.
And I think the word that comes to my mind is something like distraction, right? That sometimes we get distracted by cats in our face, but but more so we get distracted by other kind of cares and concerns, and if I say something, what will this person think, right? There are most of the people in our lives whom we love, we do not express it as much as we should. And why don't we? Well, we're distracted by other things. We are distracted by the fear of being maybe vulnerable, right? Because to admit, your love and to express your love leaves you vulnerable that it be, unrequited, right? That it not be returned as well. And there's a vulnerability to that kind of silos us, right? The human family comes about through an interconnected reality, right? We give live birth, like none of us hatched out of an egg, right? We know at least who one of our parents are, and ideally we know who both our parents are,
Yeah.
and we are kind of born into that community, and yet everything kind of the prince of this world wants to distract us from that, wants to kind of pull us away from the unity of our kind of biological family, right? And furthermore, kind of pull us out from the unity of the human family, and to isolate us into our own little, you know, bubbled cars traveling down the highway, and not to be kind of connected and to see another as another self, right? That a friend becomes another self, right? And the more kind of magnanimous or big-minded or big-spirited we become, right? That's how that extension flows out. The whole idea of say patriotism makes no sense if that leads you to go where the bullets are flying, right? Wait a second, I have a job to preserve myself and to care and to defend, the people closest to me. So why would I just sort of go to a foreign land and get shot at, right? Well, it's because, right, that you see the patria, right, the fatherland, right, or the motherland, or whichever kind of tradition you come from, that the nation is, you identify with them, right? That I'm an American, right, and therefore I defend all Americans in that sense. That there's a part of me that has a sense of the justice of sort of the natural law extended in that to that degree, and I think that comes about if we can avoid those distractions, right? There's literally kind of drawing us away from the reality of the human family, right? The reality of our adopted status as brothers and sisters in Christ, right? That's kind of the tug, and here in the case of the story, right? It's the guy putting the gun in your face that allows you to see clearly that fundamental truth, which had previously to this point evaded us, consciously or unconsciously.
Do you think that gun gets pointed at our face every day somehow? And so, so here we have an extraordinary incident, so we asked, that's a question. He says, she would have been a good woman if it had been somebody to shoot her every minute of her life. So does he literally mean that? Well, it can't be. You get shot once, and that's the end of that. There's no other minute. But as you put it, there are different ways. Are there different ways of getting shot? Are those things built into everyday life? Little ways of getting. What does it mean to get shot? I mean, is it something along the lines of your our bubble? This car image you're using. We're in our safe little womb tomb, and just things keep poking at it. If we could try to stay at it, and those things are usually painful and annoying, but it becomes a moment of grace. In these stories, it's a moment of grace. Jason, you used the word magnanimous, and it might have been 25 years ago, more. Bishop Barron wrote somewhere about Flannery O'Connor. He's a big fan, and his take was the going from the small soul to the big soul, from being pusillanimous to magnanimous, and that maybe the stories that I've read, I haven't read them all. There's a moment of violence that gives a person a chance to go for the world to get bigger while the old world's getting destroyed. So I mean I took it that way,
Yeah.
and yeah. So
No, but I think there is some cosmic beauty in the idea of a day, right? Like in a way, we kind of become accustomed to it that like sleep is just a natural thing, and I do it every 24 to 25 hours or whatever. Like, and I need it to rest and recoup and to kind of recreate my body and all these other things. And sleep's very important. Everybody should get their sleep, right? But in a sense, like it is sort of this arbitrary weird thing. Like the image, the what is revealed about heaven is right, that there is no night, right? That the Christ the light is always illuminating everything, right? There's no need for sleep, and so sleep is a time for now. And yet every time we go to sleep and wake up, and it's a new day, right? There's sort of this clock built in to getting accomplished what is put before us every day, right? And the whole idea of procrastination, right, for tomorrow, is almost sort of a presumption that tomorrow is going to come, and draws away from what's on my plate to do today, right? And so we look at something like the spiritual sort of regimen of someone like St. Ignatius of Loyola, right, and sort of his focus on the exam and having his the Jesuits after him kind of be committed to this idea of taking an account of what happened in the day, and what was good, what was a consolation, what were the desolations, right? How can I improve in the next day?
Yeah.
And so that test is there, I think, right? The gun is pointed at us every day.
Yeah.
That sleep is sort of a little death, right? And yet oftentimes we don't see it as such. So it could be pointing the gun at us and we don't realize it, right?
Yeah, no, that's well.
I think
That's well. Yeah, that's well
something
said,
where this story, and the misfit and the pointing of the gun and being able to kind of project ourselves into the grandmother's position, right, allows us to at least see that the gun, right, see the finality of our actions in a microcosm, in a story that could hopefully influence our daily life.
Yeah. And I love the grandmother. I think she's delightful. She's funny, and again, she's the mixture of all kinds of qualities. And how many of us don't long for some past, and how many of us don't have some feeling that at least we're better than whoever, these people or those people. So it's easier to see when it's somebody else. So no, I think she's great. But that your point about the examine of the day, that things I did well or poorly, sort of a different angle of these rocket ships that come into your world from outside, that on one hand, more than you didn't, who deserved that terrible thing to happen in this story, but most of our day they're just smaller things, but every now and then the big things do come along, and I'm sure I miss it all the time, but that those can be moments of grace, moments of God revealing something. But it definitely is death and resurrection. It's death, no question about it. Is there resurrection or not? You mentioned the beginning about sort of the ambiguity at the end. Yeah, you don't know, because these aren't Disney stories. These aren't bad schlocky Christian art, where just everything's just so hot you get beaten over the head with some simple message. So I think it's great that it respects the freedom of each character, and it's also more believable. So yeah.
True. Well, thank you for sharing your insights on Flannery O'Connor, and A Good Man is Hard to Find. I want to give you some time to share with your projects with our audience, and to let them know how they can follow your work.
Yeah, sure. So now I'm the head of school at Holy Family Academy, where you and I met and worked together for a couple of years. So it's a small Catholic school in Manchester, New Hampshire, on the historic west side of Manchester, New Hampshire. grades 7 through 12, 20 kids per grade. Great books based. We don't read only great books. A lot of the books we read we consider great books, and that's fine. We like John Senior has that thing about you got to read all these good books before you read the great books. So anyway, but they will read their Plato, and they will read Aristotle, and O'Connor is in there as well. Socratic method seminar method in classes. We able to get to daily mass. We're on the campus of St. Marie's, so we walk 3 minutes over to the church here for daily mass. So so that's what's going on with the school here. And then I run the Don Bosco Boys Camp, and it's a boys' day camp out of my parish in Concord, New Hampshire, Christ the King Parish. In 2 weeks, the last 2 weeks of July, we'll get about 75 boys per week from age 5 or 6 up to 14 are the campers, and then you have counselors in training, teenagers, then the college age guys are counselors, and they've almost all come up through the ranks. So, and it just we start at the parish, and there's game room and building blocks and foosball and Pinewood Derby cars, and then we have prayer and a little catechism. And we go to the park for capture the flag and wrestling matches and dodgeball. So it's something that parents always say this. It's disappearing from today, where you can just have boys led by guys, and they can wrestle and come home dirty and smelly and bloody, within reason. And as one parent said, I love the camp. My boys come home happy and tired. so we're doing that. So.
Yes, no, that's both very exciting projects, activities, opportunities for the people in the Concord, New Hampshire, and Manchester, New Hampshire area. We will put the links in the description. So if you're interested in learning more about Holy Family Academy, the Don Bosco Boys Camp, head down to the description and follow the links for those opportunities. Thank you again, Mark. It was a pleasure having you on the show today. And a special thanks to our audience from all of us here at the Confederal Reserve and the BetterPears Cultural Empire. Thank you for watching. See you next time on the Confederal Reserve. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. You can click here to watch a recent interview of the Confederal Reserve, or over here to view the playlist of the BetterPears podcast.